What's up, guys? This is Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be breaking down some insane college wide receiver versus DB one-on-one. So I hope this video helps you guys out. Hope it could teach you a few new things, but also, fellas, if you are a wide receiver and would like 500 plus wide receiver drills and gym exercises that you guys can do, all mapped out into a daily training schedule to follow, check out that very first link in the description below for our ultimate 8-week wide receiver workout plan. Like I said, it's 500 plus drills, gym exercises, all specifically for wide receivers. We give you exact sets and reps, examples of each drill and exercise, all mapped out for you. So very first link in that description below. If you're interested, fellas, let's get started with this video. So now, first route we're going to be looking at here. This video was sent to me. These next two videos were sent to me from a North Carolina State wide receiver running some one-on-ones versus one of their DBs. And I want to break down just some of these routes, what you guys can think about when running these routes, and pretty much how to structure it. So this first route he's going to be running here is called a jerk route. So if you're not familiar with the jerk route, it looks a lot like a whip route. You would run it the exact same way. We're trying to make it look the exact same way. However, you break back to the inside. So we're going to play this full speed, then we'll break it down. So he comes off the ball, attacks the outside, throws a jab, and is able to get that DB to hesitate, sit, and stay to the outside. So how is he able to do this? So if you have to run any type of double move that builds off of a slant, and you have this inside shade press coverage DB, you would have to run it exactly like how you run a slant versus that inside shade press coverage DB. So if you had to run a slant and you had inside shade press, what you would do is you would try to attack this DB's outside shoulder. You try to attack his outside hip. Our goal is to get him to open up to the fade so we could slip back underneath. So that's what you have to do off the line, and that's what this wide receiver does. So you see how he comes off the ball, he gives a little kind of hesitation move, gives a crossover to the outside, and then slips back underneath. So on any double move in this case, obviously wide receivers have to be a salesman. To be a salesman, you got to focus on three things with your routes. Number one, you have to make sure that you are running hard. No DB is going to crash onto a double move route. We're not going to get him to look foolish. We're not going to get him to bite on a certain fake if we're not running hard and if we're not controlling the tempo of the route. So when we break over the middle, a lot of wide receivers talk about like, oh, well, you don't want to run full speed into your routes. You want to be controlled. And yes, you do want to be controlled, but it's like a full speed control. You want to be running hard. You can't be jogging because you're afraid to cut while you're running full speed. So we got to make sure that we're going to cross his face and actually get him to crash down. So now the second thing to be able to sell the route is you have to make sure that your hips and your shoulders are committed to this slant. And that's going to help us sell the whip route as well. And I'll explain that in a second. But when he breaks to this slant route, hips and shoulders are committed. That's the first thing. When that DB is in press, man-to-man coverage, where are his eyes supposed to be? Watching our hips. So if we're trying to sell a route, whether you're running like a comeback route and you're trying to sell a fade, or whether you're running a whip route, or whether you're running a jerk route, you have to make sure that you sell with your body. And then last but not least, you have to make sure that your stride length is the same. We got to make sure that we're actually gaining ground when we are running. We're not taking short, choppy steps, not going anywhere. Okay, so now, to make this route look like a whip route, the most important thing is going to be that upper half, like we mentioned. So you see when this wide receiver puts the brakes on, he sits his butt down, he's bringing his chin to his knees, got that violent hip drop to be able to slow himself down. Guys, when you're doing all of those things that we just mentioned to sell your routes, running hard, running in full stride, having a good body language, all those things are great, and I think every wide receiver can do that. It's the change of direction that makes it difficult to do that. Like it's hard, it's much easier said than done to run full speed and cut on a dime than it is to actually put it into play. So he comes out here, he puts the brakes on. Now you see how when he starts to make this break, his hips and his shoulders get back parallel to the line of scrimmage. That is exactly what you want to do. Whether you're running a whip route and you're just trying to get out to the sideline, you have to flip those hips and shoulders. Luckily in our case, we're cutting back to the inside. We're trying to make it look like a whip route, but we just put the brakes on and then go. That is a textbook jerk route here from this wide receiver. I'm sure some people have different names for this. For some people call this a China route. I'm sure there's a million different names for this. That's the terminology that I use, but this route builds off of the whip. You run the slant, then you run the whip, then you run the jerk route. And all of it has to look the same when we are facing that inside shade press coverage. Let's play this again, full speed one more time. Great job by this wide receiver, making this route look the same, putting the brakes on, and then getting in and out of this route. Okay, so this next route that we're going to be looking at here is this is kind of like this is a more unique route. It's more of like a I'm sure all of you have seen like a post dig before where like you break to the post, and you take 2 steps to the post and then you flatten it off 90 degrees straight back across the field. This is kind of the same thing, but you would go corner and then flatten it off to an out route. So I would consider this an out route with maybe like a corner stem, if you will. But I mainly want to talk about the release here, okay? So if you're running an outside breaking route, like let's say you're running a comeback, let's say you're running a corner, let's say you're running a 10-yard out, and you have an inside shade, like kind of press coverage, catch technique look like we have here from this DB. Most important thing would be what? How would you structure this route? You would want to make sure that you attack this DB's leverage to the inside. We're trying to hold him to the inside so you could take this outside release and have some space to the sideline. A lot of wide receivers, what they'll do versus this inside shade press is they'll just take off and go run to the outside. But guys, that's exactly what the DB wants you to do. When you come up to the line of scrimmage, our goal is to identify 3 things about a DB. Number 1 is going to be his leverage. So is he shaded inside like this? Is he right in front of me, or is he outside leverage? Because that determines how he's trying to play me and what he's trying to do. Second thing would be the distance between me and him. And then the last thing would be the coverage. Now, all of those are important in terms of how I structure my route. It's not about the break of the route. I'm not doing a specific release for outside breaking routes. I'm not doing a specific release for a post route or a dig route. It's based on the DB. The DB is how I choose what I do off the line. So when we know that he's inside leverage, we know he's trying to take away the inside and he's trying to force us to the outside. So it does me no good if I just take off and go run to the outside, because he's going to get hands on me, put hands right on my hip, right on my shoulder, and squeeze me to the outside. Even if I have room, he's going to be right on my hip, and that's a tough throw for the QB. So what we have to do is we got to make sure that we attack him inside. Let's make him think I'm running a slant, a dig. So maybe he holds his leverage, and that gives us more space to be able to operate. So let's play this full speed, and let's break it down. So wide receiver comes off the ball, closes the space, gets up to the break, and then flattens this thing right off to get a ton of separation on it. So let's talk about it. Now, some of you, like off the line of scrimmage, this is where a lot of wide receivers struggle, because like I think when wide receivers who are, on the smarter side of things, like the ones who watch this channel, and we appreciate everybody who watches this channel and keeps up with the videos, because there's a lot of information on here that a lot of people don't know about. Like this is YouTube, we have Instagram, we have TikTok. Those are bigger platforms where we get a ton of views, a lot more views than we do on the YouTube videos. There is a ton of information on these YouTube videos, and if you keep up with it, it gets engraved in your head. You see a look, you already know how to roll. And then we meet so many people at the camps that we do who are YouTube guys, and they're always on the smarter side of things, right? So this is where a lot of those guys get tripped up, because they come up to the line of scrimmage, they see this inside look, they know they have an outside route, they know what to do. But sometimes the DB is smart. Sometimes he tries to disguise his coverage. He works a technique where maybe he stays a little bit more patient and he starts to inch back, trying to keep some space with us. Now, this wide receiver does a great job of coming off the ball and not just making a move right away. If we see that this DB is starting to inch back, we still got to close the space with him. We still got to eat up that cushion and try to step onto his toes. So when I push up vertical into the route, he doesn't have space to recover. That's what the DB is hoping that we do. They call this like an inch back technique. I've heard some people talk. I'm not a DB guy either, but it's like an inch back or a motor technique where they try to keep some space between the two of us, right? They want to keep that gap of room so they can recover and get hands. Because imagine if your plan as a wide receiver was just to give this DB, like, let's say a crossover move. You're going to step with your left foot, fake with the right foot, then go up to the outside and break on your out route. But you start the release and then this DB starts to inch back like this, and you give a jab, you still got to get up to like 10 to 15 yards, but there's some space here. That DB can cut you off to that space because you didn't step on his toes. If he starts to inch back, we got to take the cushion away. If he's right up on the line of scrimmage, I don't got to worry about it. But he starts to back up and leave space, I have to close the space. I have to step on his toes, so when I push up vertical, it is easy for me to get skinny. Right? And getting skinny means like getting hip to hip with the DB. This wide receiver went a little bit wide. I would like to see him be here so we have more space to the sideline. But because he's on the hash, it doesn't make the biggest difference in the world. If he had a wider split, it would make a difference in the world, because he would be getting to the sideline way too fast, throwing off the quarterback's timing, and that DB would be right on his hip. So guys, we have to make sure that we get skinny, and we do that by stepping on the DB's toes. If he wants to keep space, we have to close that space. Let's play it again, full speed one more time. Great job by that wide receiver closing the distance with his release. Just make sure that we get skinny pushing up. Okay, so now this next example is going to be something very, very similar to that last one in terms of his release. And this is a wide receiver at the University of Charlotte. And this is a slant route versus that kind of inch back motor technique DB. Okay, so now we come up to the line of scrimmage. What do we want to try to identify on the DB? What were those three things? Number one would be his leverage, right? So we see that this DB's lined up like a little bit shaded to the inside. On film, how you can tell is you want to look at the midline of the DB. So like the line that goes, the imaginary line that goes down the middle of his body. If that midline is even with our front foot and his feet are kind of like outside of our front foot, that tells you that he's inside leverage. If his midline is even with our back foot, that tells you that he's probably outside leverage. If he's just squared up right in front of me, he's head up. Okay, so that's kind of how you could tell from this specific angle. Second thing is distance. We see that he's got maybe about a yard of space from us. He's not right up on the line of scrimmage. He's got some distance. And then the last thing is coverage. So we just want to know, easy tell, especially in one-on-ones, we obviously know it's man, but if he's in a squared up stance, eyes are on us, we know that it's probably man-to-man coverage. So now, when we have this type of gap of space, number one thing that you would probably be thinking on a slant route is, okay, I'm going to close the distance with him, and then I'm going to take like this diamond release, right? Where you go 3 hard steps to the outside shoulder. Our goal is to flip the DB to the fade, and then we could slip back underneath winning on the slant. That would be the goal. I'm not going to try to attack him and then cross his face, because a disciplined DB is going to hold that leverage. He will not let us get that inside release. So what he does here, I'm going to play this full speed, then we'll break it down. He comes off the ball. DB starts to kind of inch back, give that motor technique. So all we can do is just close the distance with him. Let's step on his toes. If he wants to keep space with me, let's go close the space with him, right? So when you get this like soft press look, fellas, DB who's patient, DB who's trying to keep that cushion with us, let's eat up the cushion. Let's close the distance. Let's try to step onto his toes. And you see how this wide receiver just uses a simple crossover fake, stepping wide to the outside. His hips, his shoulders sell this movement, and then he's able to get off of this press easy money, right? So again, your plan off the line of scrimmage might be, okay, I'm going to do a diamond release, but as a wide receiver, you got to have a plan, but you also have to be prepared to react, because DBs are smart people. And again, you can prepare for this beforehand by studying film. If you see on film with a team that you're playing throughout the week that this DB time and time again, whenever he's impressed, he likes to stay patient, he likes to inch back, he likes to try to keep some cushion, with your releases, you should kind of have that in the back of your head. You know what you want to try to do off the line, but if he starts to take that away, or he starts to try to be patient, keep some distance, we have to be able to react. Close the space, eat up his cushion, step on his toes, and then we could step wide to create space. So let's play this again, full speed one more time. Great job by that wide receiver stepping outside the frame as well and getting separation on that slant. All right, fellas, I really want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to leave those in the comment section below. We always appreciate the feedback. It's always great to hear from you guys. And again, fellas, if you would like an 8-week wide receiver on-field and gym workout schedule to follow, everything wide receivers should be doing this summer, check out that very first link in the description below. We'd love to get you on that. I'll see you guys next time.